Hello to everyone who is joining now. Welcome to our session for today, how to attract the right attendees and secure top auction items with ease. We have a jam-packed session with great information that we're going to be getting into. We're going to go ahead and start at the top of the hour at 2 p.m. Eastern time. If you are coming in, make sure you utilize the chat box and let us know where you're joining from. Drop a hello, your organization name, state, so we can see who we have on, and we're going to get started very shortly. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you're just joining us to how to attract the right attendees and secure top auction items with ease, we're really excited to have everyone here today. We're going to go ahead and get started at the top of the hour. But if you are joining us, please make sure you utilize the chat box to say hello. I already see we have a few people from all over the country joining, so welcome. We're very excited to go ahead and get started shortly.
I saw a familiar name.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'll start with introductions as more people continue to funnel in. It's great to see where everyone's joining from. So welcome, everyone. Our session today will be recorded, so you are going to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation as well as a recorded version of the session today. So if there's any information that you hear that you don't get a chance to jot down, no worries, you will get all of that and more afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so we can get a clean recording. Welcome to how to attract the right attendees and secure top auction items with ease. So for our agenda today, we're going to start by introducing our presenter. We're going to ask a few poll questions to hear from you. We're going to talk about filling your room with bidders, not eaters, and then how to acquire the right auction items, talk a little bit about technology to implement all these great things you're going to see, and then get into some questions and answers. This is an interactive session, so during this time, please make sure you're utilizing that chat box and the Q&A box. Chats come through all throughout the session. The best way to make sure we see your question and answer it is in that Q&A feature on our end. So I'll go ahead and introduce our presenter for today. We have Jay Fiske. He is the Chief Auctioneer and Co-President of Arreva's MaestroSoft Auction Software Division. How are you doing today, Jay?
I'm doing great, Gabby. Thank you so much. I'm excited for today's webinar.
I'm very excited too. My name is Gabriella Swemi. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Arreva, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. So we want to go ahead and start by asking the audience some questions. You're going to see a poll pop up on your screen. You should be seeing it now. We want to know how many fundraising events do you run a year? So just let us know, and these can be, auctions, galas, golf tournaments, anything that has a fundraising component to it. We just want to kind of take the temperature of the room and see what everyone's doing out there. Okay, go ahead and share these results. So it seems the majority of you are doing 2 events a year with kind of all around answers spread out. Interesting to see. Okay. The next question we would like to ask you, do you host a live or silent auction? There's a few options you can pick here. Maybe you just host a silent auction. Maybe you only host a live auction. Maybe you do both. Maybe you do neither. Maybe you would like to incorporate a live or silent auction. Maybe you've done one in the past, but you aren't doing one anymore. Our webinar today is about, securing top auction items, getting the right people in the room for an auction. So we're just curious to see how many of you have an auction component at your event as well. Okay, let's go ahead and share these results. So this is interesting to see. The majority of you do both a live and silent auction, which is great because we're going to have ideas for both of those on this webinar. And then the last question we want to ask you today, what are your biggest challenges around fundraising events? For this poll, you can select multiple. So if maybe you are resonating with 2 or 3 of these challenges, you can let us know. Maybe it's getting people to attend, finding the right auction items, checking guests in and out. So how does credit card processing work? People paying, are you getting people their bid numbers in time? Maybe that's a struggle. Lighting, sound, staging, anything to do with decorations, the technical aspects of it, getting volunteers to help run your event. Maybe you're not raising enough through your events, which we're going to give you a lot of tips too on how maybe your setup, you just change one thing, you could end up raising more. Spending too much for how much we raise. That's a big one. And keeping your event on schedule. That's a really important one that you might not think is important, but keeping your event on schedule is big. Okay. I'll go ahead. I have a few answers coming in. I'll go ahead and end this now and share these results. So the majority of you are having struggle with getting people to attend and finding auction items, which is perfect for what we're going to be talking about today. I see a lot of you said not raising enough through events, checking guests in, and spending too much time for how much we raise. You were in the right session for today, for sure. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jay, who's going to give us some great information.
Thank you, Gabby. As we go through the slides, a couple of reminders. Number one, we are recording this, so you're going to have a link to it. You'll be able to go back and review it later. The second commitment I'm making personally to you, that if you use the chat for questions, I may not be able to answer those questions in real time during the presentation. If I see one that pops up that I think is pertinent to the topic, I may jump in and say, hey, we have a question, and go ahead and answer it because it's on topic. It's on where we happen to be at that point in time. But I won't be able to answer all of them in real time. I personally will commit to you that once the webinar is over, I will go through the chat. We're going to save the chat. I'll identify all the questions, and we will be sending out an answer to every question that shows up in the chat today. Okay, so and we're going to have a Q&A session at the end as well. We'll try and get some of those answered at the end of the webinar. But for those that don't get answered during the webinar, don't feel like the effort to ask the question is not worth it. It is worth it. Go ahead and ask your question, and you will get a personal response from me following the webinar. It may take a few days to get through them all, depending on how many there are, but you will get a response. Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, let's get started. Let's clarify a few things right up front. When you think of what a gala is, it's at its basic level, it's 2 elements. It's a room full of people, and it's something for them to spend their money on. That's basically it. Everything else around it, lighting, sound, decorations, themes, food service, speeches, everything else, that's all life support for the gala. But the gala essentially at its root is fill a room with people, give them a reason to spend money. And at the end of the night, you end up with more money than you started, and you've had a gala. So there's a few things though that you should know about the audience as you're filling that room. First is ask yourself, are they there for the cause? Some of them are. Some of them care deeply about your mission. Some are there for the party. They just know that you're serving good food and you got good drinks and great wine, and they want to be there. And then some people don't even know why they're there. They just know that their company told them to attend, or they were perhaps dragged there by a friend. And so there as well. So your audience is a cross section of all three of these. And we're going to talk as we get into this a little deeper is how you can use that to your advantage. Also, don't think of each guest as a bidder. They're not automatically a bidder. A single person in the room is a potential bidder, and we call that person a buying unit. But a couple that comes to your event is also a potential bidder, and they typically don't bid against each other. I always like to joke and say that couples don't bid against each other except on the family counseling. So it's just kind of a joke. But really, husbands and wives, couples, significant others, when they're at an event together, they tend to bid as a unit. So we call a couple one buying unit as well. So you have single person, a couple. Either way, it's one buying unit. So as an example, if you had 200 people in the room, and most of them were couples, realize they're not all couples, so you'll have some singles at your event. But for easy math, if you have 200 people in the room, we're going to consider them couples, and that's going to be 100 buying units, not 200. That's important, and you'll see in a future slide to know when we start tracking how much your potential is. So here's an example of that. I want you to visualize a sponge. I'm holding up in the air right now in my hand. I'm holding up a virtual sponge, and that's a 1 quart sponge. And if I was to ask you the question, how much water does a 1 quart sponge hold? I know that all of you on the call right now would say, well, a 1 quart sponge holds 1 quart of water. That's exactly right. It holds 1 quart of water. If I pour 8 ounces of water into the 1 quart sponge, the sponge will absorb that 8 ounces of water, but the sponge has what we call excess capacity. I could actually have poured an entire quart of water into that 1 quart sponge, and it would have retained that entire quart of water. Likewise, if I tried to pour a gallon of water into a 1 quart sponge, I would end up with 1 quart of water in the sponge, but I'd also end up with a lot of water on the floor, right? Because the sponge would not absorb the entire gallon of water. It only absorbed a quart of water. So I say that to try and have you visualize what your audience is like. Different size audiences have different capacities, just like different size sponges have different capacities. So as we look at how much money could we reasonably expect to get out of an audience, we can set some parameters based on how big the audience is, how many buying units we have. So an example, if one buying unit is $500 to $1,000, which is a typical capacity. And by the way, I'm going to stop here and say there are outliers. If you're Children's Hospital, you're going to probably be beyond $1,000 per buying unit. If you're a small elementary school in a small town, it's not a very wealthy town, you're going to be an outlier the other direction. Your audience might be more into the sponge size might be more in the $250 to $300 per buying unit range. But the middle of the bell curve, the norm, if you will, without the outliers on either end, is about $500 to $500 per buying unit. And so that's a good planning number for you. So a 300-person gala, 300 people in the room, 150 buying units is a $75,000 to $150,000 capacity. That doesn't mean you're going to make $75,000 to $150,000. It means that you have the ability with the people that are in the room to make that, provided you give them $75,000 to $150,000 worth of reason to go about giving you that money. Okay, so there you go. So in other words, fill the room with bidders. Selling tickets to a party is pretty easy. Hey, I want to go to my party. Sure, I'll go to a party. Pretty easy to sell a ticket to that. Building an audience of supporters for your mission is a little more difficult. It's well worth the effort. And by the way, last note here, if you're using auction management software, and hopefully you are, that auction management software is critical to sizing up your own sponge, because you can go back to last year and the year before that and the year before that and look at how many dollars per buying unit you raised. And you should have a report, dollars per buying unit in your software. It'll tell you, well, this year we did $575 per buying unit, or we did $823 per buying unit. That will help you make decisions going forward as to what you can expect for your next gala. Okay.
Jay, there was one question in the chat.
Sure.
The capacity for buying units, does that include what they spent on the tickets?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking that. And it does make sense to answer that now. No, we're talking about how much money is spent in the room. If you spent money to come to the event, if you made a donation in advance of the event, that that is not part of the equation. The equation is I walked into the room and I left the room with $500 to $1,000 per buying unit less because I left it for the cause. So thank you for the question. So here's kind of that bell curve I was talking about. And that range is $500 to $1,000. Again, like I said, there's outliers. There's going to be some causes that are going to be out there $1,500 to $2,000 per buying unit, and there's going to be some that are on the other end. But for planning purposes, your gala, and if you go back to your auction software, if you have it, or if you're able to retrieve your data from last year, you can go look at it and calculate what were your dollars per buying unit. And your dollars per buying unit should be within in that middle of that bell curve. Now, if they're not, that's not the end of the world. It just means that you have something you can work on. Obviously, if you're beyond the bell curve, that's kind of a good thing, but it also means you're maxing out your sponge. You need to get a bigger sponge. We'll talk about that. And if you're way below it, it means you're not giving people enough opportunity. You're not giving them through whether it's in-room games or raffle or raise the paddle or wine pull or live auction or silent auction or something something else going on during your gala. You're not giving that sponge, you're not giving those buying units enough reason to give you the money. So if you're well below that buying curve, you're down the low end of the buying curve, think about what opportunities are we presenting to our audience to give us the money? Are we giving them enough reasons to give us the money? So when you do your post event analysis, so go back to the problem. You do your post event analysis, and and you do everybody usually does a survey after your gala, and they'll say, well, tell us how we did. Well, it was a great party. Oh, it's we had a great time. And boy, I'm glad you didn't charge us too much to get in because we wouldn't be able to afford to get there, And if as a committee you're thinking, wow, everyone had a wonderful time, and you know what, we even made a few dollars. If that's kind of what's going on, it's telling me that you are probably leaving money on the table. If on the other hand, you hear comments like, wow, this was a great event, and your committee says, what, we have some terrific supporters, and boy, we had such a generous audience, and or your guest says, wow, I really connected to the cause. I didn't know that much about you, but when I left, I really felt bonded with what you're trying to do. Please invite me again. If you're hearing those sort of comments, then you're probably doing the right thing. Okay, let's go to the next one. So inside your audience, there's a misconception that to have a successful gala, we just need to have a bunch of rich people. And the problem with just having a bunch of rich people is that rich people tend to have everything they already want. They're not going to buy your week getaway up in the mountains because they probably already have a summer home up in the mountains. They're going to go to their summer home, not the one you're selling at the auction. If you have airplane tickets, they're not going to buy your coach airplane tickets because they're going to take their private plane. So at the top of the pyramid, you don't have very many bidders, and that's probably a good thing because you don't have anything they're going to spend their money on except maybe raise the paddle. That might be a good place to search for people to put their paddle up and make a donation, or perhaps for matching funds of some kind. But they're not going to buy a lot of auction stuff. At the bottom of the pyramid, you have people that are there because of the party. You have people that came to the party. They're not going to spend any money, but they're just happy they're getting fed. The successful event for them was the food was good and they had a glass of wine, and that's basically all that mattered. The money you're going to make at the event is between those two levels of the pyramid. They're not at the top of the pyramid, not at the bottom of the pyramid. The bulk of your audience are going to be where you're going to make your money, and you're going to make your money from silent auction sales and live auction sales. The live auction typically will have more revenue than the silent auction. It'll also have fewer bidders. In other words, the people that bid in the live auction will be less plentiful than the people that bid in the silent auction. You'll have more plentiful bidders in a silent than a live. So how do you use that to your advantage? Well, you want to make sure that in the live auction, you have the right items for the people that can bid in the live auction to spend their money on. And we're going to talk about how to get those items later on in the webinar. But primarily, you are think of this in two levels. Silent auction is about buying stuff. Silent auction is about purchases. If I could get that $100 item for $70, I'm happy. If I could get that $500 basket for $300, I'm happy. That's a silent auction mentality. The live auction's a little different. That mentality is, I really care about the mission of these people, and I'm willing to spend the $2,000 on that weekend getaway, even though it's only worth $1,500 because it's for a good cause. The live auction, if it's done right, your yield meaning dollars raised per the value of the item, the yield should be at or above 100% of the value of the item. Not so in the silent auction. Silent auction yield is typically 50 to 70% yield. It can be a little higher. Should not be any lower than 50%, but it could be, 60, 70, 80% in the silent auction as far as what you receive for the value of the items you put up for bid. The live auction should always be near 100% or higher if it's being done right. If it's not being done right and you're not getting 100% yield in the live auction, it tells me two things. One, you had the wrong items for the people, or you didn't have the right people, one or the other. Okay. And again, your auction software will help you evaluate that. Your auction software will give you yield by silent auction, yield by live auction. You'll be able to go back to last year, the year before that, and see how you did. And say, well, our live auction was at 95%. We got a little room to grow there. Our silent auction was at 50, 55%. We got a little room to grow there. So remember that not every person in the room is a bidder. Some are there for the party, the food, the dancing, or because they had to be there because somebody's in the company said, hey, we bought a corporate table and, lucky you, we're going to send you to the gala, and that happens. That totally happens. And it's best to have as many people as you can in the room that are there for your mission. Sell your mission. You should be selling your mission with your save the date card. You should be selling the mission on your invitations in your website. You should be selling the mission as soon as they check in at the check-in table. You should be selling your mission in the silent auction, and you'll be selling your mission when they come into the banquet room, and you should be selling your mission on screens, during the dinner. You should always be selling your mission because that is where you're going to get the bulk of your money out of your live auction and raise the paddle. So you want to make sure people are there with the right emotional connection to what it is that you do. So the remainder of this presentation, we're going to just keep it simple. We're going to talk about bidders and eaters. The bidders, this is very simple logic. If you have a bidder, they will eat your food. If you have an eater, they will not always bid on your items. Okay, so your food's going to get consumed either way. It's going to get consumed by the bidders. It's going to get consumed by the eaters. Your items may not get bid on by the eaters. So we need to show you a little bit about how do you get eaters, not bidders. Okay, so let's go on to that one. So there's a myth of auctions, and the myth is that we make money from the high bidder. Well, that's just logical, Jay. Of course, we make money from the high bidder. We sell an item for $1,000. We made money. We made $1,000 from the high bidder. That's not entirely true. You collect it from the high bidder, but you actually make the money from the second, third, fourth, and fifth place bidders because they're the ones that make sure the high bidder pays appropriately. In other words, a $1,000 item has an opening bid of perhaps $300, and it goes up from there. Well, if you have 3 people bidding, that item may end up at $700. If you have 4 people bidding, that item might end up at $800. If you have 7, 8, 9, 10 people bidding, that item might sell for $1,200 or $1,300. It's the losers, if you will. I know it sounds kind of negative, but it's the losers on an item that make sure the high bidder pays appropriately. It's the people that play the game and don't win that are going to really be the reason why you are making what you make. Having 2 people bidding on an item in a live auction is very bad. Having 10 people bidding on an auction item in the live auction is very good. So the idea is to get participants, not necessarily the people that are going to win. They're important, but people that'll play the game. You want activity. You want lots of people to play the game. So each bid step is making your revenue. If an auctioneer is going up $100 bid step, $50 bid steps, $250 bid steps, $500 bid steps, whatever it might be, every bid step made you money. Every time that auctioneer said, we have 2,500, how about 2,750? That's 2,750, now 3,000. That going from 2,500 to 2,750 to 3,000 made you money. And those could have been 3 different people. So important to think about it as bid steps, not ultimately who wins. It's critical then that you have a room full of bidders, not a room full of eaters, because people that are sitting on their hands during the live auction are not making you any money. So it's just talked about the myth in the live auction. Let's talk about the silent auction for a second. There are lots of barriers in the silent auction. One of the barriers in the silent auction is poor lighting. I see this all the time. I can't tell you, I've lost count of the number of events I've gone to where a silent auction room was dimly lit. It could have been dimly lit because somebody inappropriately thought it would be good to have a dim atmosphere. Sometimes it's the room just doesn't have good lighting. I've been to events before where they put items in a room that had no internal lighting in the room, but they checked it that day, or that I shouldn't say that day, they checked it in weeks in advance. During the day, they went during the day to check out the room and said, oh, it looks wonderful. Look how good this is here. Well, it's because they had skylights all over the room, all over the ceiling. And the skylights were letting in natural lighting during the day. But once the sun went down, which is when the gala was, there was no lighting and it was very dark in there. So you want to check your silent auction room at the same time of day that your event is going to be. Go to the event center, wherever that event is, a ballroom, whatever it might be, and walk through the room where your silent auction is going to be at the same time of day that your silent auction is going to occur. If necessary, bring in auxiliary lighting. Auxiliary lighting is very easy to do. You don't have to rent it. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy some torch-air lamps or some simple spotlights and place them every 8 to 15 feet around the silent auction. For very low cost, you can put in some nice auxiliary lighting. Bad sound is another reason. That's another common barrier in the silent auction. But you need to have sound in the silent auction because you need to have the ability for your MC or auctioneer to promote the bidding, let people know how to bid, let them know when the bidding is going to close, spotlight certain items during the silent auction. Very important to do that. And then also, bad sound can really hurt you during the live auction as well. In the live auction, if people can't hear the bid steps, they'll tune out. They'll just just chit chat to their friends around the table. You want really good sound. This will kill an auction faster than anything, is having bad sound. And no, a disc jockey's sound is not good sound. I know a lot of people say, well, we have a disc jockey. Well, the disc jockey's sound is aimed at the dance floor. And none of your bidders are standing on the dance floor. They're back at their dinner tables. So you want a surround sound system that gives you good sound. Using improper bid forms, distracting events, having a silent auction in one room, but you got a performance. So that, the schools do this a lot. They'll say, well, the choir is going to be singing in one room and it's going on at the same time as the silent auction is going on in a different room. And that's not good. That's a distracting event. You want to focus everybody where they need to be. Crowded tables. People can't get to the tables to see the items. Narrow interest items, having things that have little or no value to most of your bidders. Having too many items. Crowded tables. People can't get there, can't look at them. Lack of display space. So these are all barriers, and every one of these barriers costs you money. Everyone is stealing you money. Work on improving all of these, and you'll make more money just because of the process of improving all of those. And of course, the biggest barrier is a room full of eaters, not a room full of bidders. That's sort of a common theme today. So here's some ways you can fill a room. You can fill a room by selling an individual entry, one person or a couple at a time. You can allow individuals to buy entries for friends. I can buy a ticket. I can buy for friends. Great. You can sell a table of 8, table of 10. You can do that. You can sell a sponsorship, and along with the sponsorship, it includes people to sit at the table. Yeah. You can sell a corporate table, and that's good. You can make a lot of money from selling the corporate table. And in other words, instead of $100 a ticket times 10, $1,000, you sell a corporate table for $2,500. So that's good. You've done a good job of making money from the corporate table. May or may not necessarily be good for buying power in the room, however. You can sell entries, but offer complimentary seating to certain groups. If you're a member of the media, if you're a politician, if you're someone who helped organize the event, whatever it might be, maybe you offer complimentary tickets. And then, of course, you can just say, you know what, we just want to have a party. This is about empowerment. We want everybody in the community to show up. If we give them a free ticket, they'll come and they'll be so grateful we gave them a free ticket that they'll spend money. And that will not happen. So the question that just popped up, I see, is what's the difference between a sponsor and a corporate table? And there's not a lot of difference. It's just really kind of semantics. You can have a sponsor for your event, like a presenting sponsor. You can have a platinum sponsor, a gold sponsor, a silver sponsor, different level sponsors. And those sponsors get some kind of recognition for that sponsorship. Perhaps they get there's signage. They get their name up on the program book, they get their name up on the screens. There might be signs around the room, whatever it might be. That's a sponsorship. And along with the sponsorship, they might also get a table. Now, a corporate table is a little different. A corporate table kind of ends up being the same. You still have a table, but this is a company that says, I'm willing to buy a table for over fair market value because as a member of the community, I want to be supportive of the cause. And so instead of the $1,000 cost for a table, if I bought individual tickets, I'm going to pay $1,500 or $2,500 or some other amount and buy the table. And then I will get recognition as a corporate table purchaser. And then of course, it's up to them to fill their table. So it's almost the same, but not exactly the same. And of course, you can do any and all of these. They're pretty obvious. All of these are ways to fill a room, right? But in the process of doing the free tickets or the process of doing complimentary tickets or selling a sponsorship or corporate table or individual, in that process, are you giving thought as to who's going to actually attend? And you should be. It's very important you look at who is going to actually attend. Let's go on to the next. So how do you increase the number of bidders? Well, right from the get-go, let's make sure that the eaters opt out. And I know this seems counterintuitive, but just stick with me on this. If you're serving an $85 meal, it's okay to charge $125 for it because the person who buys that gets a $40 tax deduction, potentially, assuming you're a 501c. The difference between the fair market value of the meal and what the person pays for it is considered a cash contribution. And so that would be a $40 tax deductibility, potentially. People that will opt in at $125, knowing they're going to get an $85 meal, and they know it's an $85 meal because we show right on the registration form that it's got a $40 potential tax deduction, then they're more likely to be a bidder, not an eater. They're more likely to be someone that's there for your cause, for your mission. You set an expectation. It clarifies it for them. You should also put on your RSVP a place for people to make an additional contribution. If someone pays $125 a ticket, it's okay to have a place on there. I'd like to make an additional donation of, and have a place for them to fill in the blank to make an additional donation. That's okay too. You should also, on your RSVP form, you should put a place for them to check a box, or preferably write in the name of their company that says, our company has an employee matching program. Why is that important? Because that helps you make money post-event. When the event's all over, you can then go into your database of reservations, and you can see, Mr. and Mrs. Smith here bought a ticket, but they work for XYZ company and they check the box that they have an event, they have a corporate matching fund. Now you have a way post-event to see if those people made a donation of any kind, raised the paddle, or perhaps overpaying for their ticket. Maybe they overpaid for an auction item, whatever it might be. And you can go back to them and say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, or Mrs. Smith, you indicated your company works for, you work for a company that has a matching gift program. Would you assist us in getting the additional $250, which is equivalent to your cash contribution? You'd be amazed. If you do this diligently, you can make 10% more in your event after the event, but you've got to be diligent about that. And then you can also offer a tiered pricing strategy. What does that mean? Well, if the ticket is $125, you can say, but if you'd like to be a patron, it's $200. Oh, and if you'd like to be a benefactor, it's $350. If you'd like to be a silver patron, that's $500. If you'd like to be a gold patron, that's $1,000. Well, why in the world would someone pay $1,000 or $500 or $350 for an $85 meal? Because it gives them a chance to make a donation to your organization as part of the process of buying a ticket, and they get a cash deductibility, potential tax deduction for the amount they overpay. Now, you can reward them for their generosity by giving them something in return. You can invite them to the VIP party. Maybe there's a meet and greet with a celebrity that they, if you're a patron or benefactor, you get to come to the early VIP party. And by the way, we have a celebrity there. They'll be doing handshakes and picture taking on a backdrop, on what we call a meet and greet or a grip and grin session. Or maybe you could list them in your program book. You may list them on a poster, put them up on the big screens. Some organizations actually provide what we call auction script for the difference. In other words, at $200, they overpaid by $115 for the meal, right? The fair market value was $85. They paid $200. They overpaid by $115. Some organizations would give that patron $100 worth of auction script to spend at the auction. And it's non-transferable and it's non-refundable. It has to be used on auction items. But now they show up with $100 worth of monopoly money, basically, to spend at the event, and that stimulates the bidding. Remember from several slides ago, I said we make money from the second, third, fourth, and fifth place bidders. We only collect it from the high bidder. Well, if someone's got a couple $100 worth of funny money in their pocket, they're going to try and spend that, and they're going to spend that by bidding. And because otherwise, at the end of the night, that $200 that they overpaid is irrelevant. You're not going to get any money back, right? So this promotes more active bidding. So the idea of auction script will actually help your bidding process. Sell your mission, though. Be as clear it's a fundraiser. This is all about raising money for your cause. There are a lot of organizations that make the mistake of trying to hide the ball. We're not going to mention fundraising at all to them. We're just going to talk about how great the party is, and we got a great theme. It's a Jamaica Me Crazy theme. It's all about Jamaica. We got night of 1,000 stars theme. You have these wonderful themes. Come party with us, and they never mention that it's a fundraiser. And now these people show up that night, and there's a fundraiser inflicted on them, and they go, "What the heck? I thought I was going to a party," and so. You want them to know they're going to a fundraiser, and that also will help you with the bidding process, especially if you can let them know ahead of time what the items are they're going to have a chance to bid on. You don't want to surprise somebody that night with an expensive item they can bid on that they haven't given some thought to for perhaps days or even weeks in advance. All right. So there you go. The bottom line is if you give someone a $125 meal and only charge $85 for it, you're going to get a lot of eaters. If you give people an $85 meal and only charge $125 for it, you're going to end up with more bidders. All right, a lot of time on that slide. Let's move on.
Jay, another great thing to mention too, when you had mentioned employee matching on your event pages, recurring giving also, giving them the option to become a recurring donor and saying, for $100 a month, we can provide X amount of school lunches for X amount of, children for the year or whatever it might be. Having those on there too on the event forms is an also great way for them to participate, even though they can't attend the event themselves.
100%. And again, I want to encourage you, a couple of you have, I want to encourage you to keep asking your questions in the chat. We'll, if we can't answer them in real time, we will continue to commit to you to send your answers back to you. Each question is going to get answered rather. Each question you ask will get answered either in real time as we're doing this, or it will be after the webinar. We'll make sure that you get a specific answer to your questions. So let's talk about sponsorships and corporate tables for just a second. There are a lot of organizations that are really, really good at selling corporate tables and sponsorships. They're really, really bad at filling the room with bidders, not eaters. There's an assumption that if someone spends $10,000 for a corporate table, somehow that corporate table is going to magically become very active bidders that can spend $5,000 and $10,000 and $15,000 on auction items. And that's just not true. That's not true. In fact, unfortunately, a lot of times companies will use the corporate table that they bought as a reward for employees. They'll actually gather up some employees that have done a particularly good job and say, guess what? Our company bought a table at the gala, and we're going to have a table right up front, and we'd like to see if you'd like to go. It doesn't cost anything. We just love to see if you'd like to go fill our table for us. So at that point, you have a table full of table seat fillers. Not unlike the Oscars, by the way. You know, when someone at the Oscars has to get up to take a break, you know, one of the stars, they have a seat filler because when they pan the audience with the, you know, with the camera, they don't want to see any empty seats there, so they have seat fillers. Well, those seat fillers are not going to get an Oscar. You know, they're filling the seat. And the corporate table is a lot like that. A lot of times you'll end up with seat fillers. They're going to eat the food, they're going to drink the wine. Uh, in fact, I kind of jokingly say that you have a room full of rented tuxedos and borrowed evening gowns because these are you have a room full of folks that aren't normal gala goers. And they go, gosh, I was invited to a gala, but I don't own a tux. You know, I better rent one, or I have to go to the gala. I don't have an evening gown. Can I borrow one from my friend? That's not a good audience, and your live auction is going to suffer from that. Okay. So when this happens, your higher end items basically are going to go flat. You're going to say, oh my gosh, we had all these tables. We spent $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 for these tables. We had this trip to Switzerland. We had this cruise. You know, we had this fabulous, you know, Tiffany tennis bracelet. We had all these wonderful things, and they didn't sell. And we were only getting 50% of value or 60% of value. You know, what happened? Well, that's because the items were mismatched to the audience. You're much better off if you know you're going to have a lot of seat fillers, have lower value items so that you get good activity. It's better to have activity on lower dollar values than have limited activity on higher dollar values. And by the way, you should ask your table sponsors, the people that buy a table, or if a sponsor gets a table, ask them to please handpick their guests. Reach back out to them. Thank you so much for your $10,000 sponsorship. We know you got a table for that. Well, you're wonderful. We appreciate your support of our mission, but we're going to have a very active live auction, and we would love it if you would help us by making sure that your table that's going to have your name on it, we're going to put a placard, you know, table sponsored by XYZ company. We're going to put your name on that table, and it would really be beneficial for you as a company and us and our mission if that table was filled with active bidders. Would you please help us by inviting folks that will be active bidders to sit at your table? So it's sort of a almost subliminal message, and that is, by the way, we're going to spotlight your table, and everyone's going to know it's your table, it's your company represented. You don't want to have a table filled with folks that are sitting on their hands during the bidding. Okay. So this is the issue for table sponsors. It's okay to make it clear that even though they're going to have dinner served at their table, that we're not just looking for people that are going to eat the dinner. It's okay to say we're looking for sponsors to reach out and fill their tables with active bidders, if you wouldn't mind. And it's okay if they know that. And again, as I mentioned before, we're going to put their name on the table. When they, you know, visibility is a great motivator, right? They're going to be highly visible. That's a good motivator for them to do the right thing. If they're not sure who to invite, it's okay to mention to them that you have the ability to put active bidders at their table, because you're going to have individual supporters of your organization that are going to buy tickets as a couple, or buy, you know, 3, 4, 5 tickets at a time. They're not really buying a whole table, but they're coming to be supportive of your mission. It's okay to place them at a corporate table if that corporation is not going to fill their own table. And that will actually is a twofer for you. It not only makes sure the company is well represented with bidders, it allows you to kind of sell that ticket twice. That's sort of like a hidden little secret there. You sold the table for $10,000, but now you're selling the entry for $150 a ticket, and you're placing the $150 ticket people at the corporate table that you've already sold for $10,000 if that company is willing to let you fill the table for them. So that's a double win. That means you can actually take a room that holds 300 people, and you can have 350, in effect, 350 tickets sold for that for that event. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask. Now, table captains are a little different. Table captains are where we reach out into the community. Often our board members or close supporters of our cause, and we say to them, would you be willing to fill a table of bidders for us? You know, we love it. They don't have to buy the table. This is a big differentiator. These are not people that have bought a table. These are people that have agreed to come to the event. They're going to buy an individual ticket, but we've asked them, because they're big supporters of our organization, we've asked them if they would fill a table of like-minded people. We probably have an audience right now, Gabby, of folks that are pretty tech savvy and fairly young, but back in my day, way back when I started out, we had a thing called a Rolodex. Everybody remembers a Rolodex, but we had business cards. We had this Rolodex. Now the Rolodex is a virtual Rolodex. It's on your cell phone, right? Got it. Okay, so I'm showing my age here, but you have a virtual Rolodex. You have you have your address list, your contact list. And so would you please go through your contact list and try and identify 4 like-minded couples to sit at your table and encourage them to buy their own ticket. And we want them to buy their own ticket because we want them to be as connected to the cause as you are. And if you can get a table captain to fill a table of like-minded folks, each buying their own ticket, I will absolutely guarantee you have a table full of bidders, not eaters. That's the best way, okay? You can also go back to, no, you're okay, you can go to the next one. You can also go back to your auction software, because in your good auction software, you'll be able to pull up a descending dollar report of everybody that bought items at the auction the prior year. And it'll show you from the person who spent the most money to the person who didn't spend anything. And so you start going down that list of the biggest bidders from the prior year, the biggest spenders prior year. Come down 10 people or come down 20 people and draw a line and say everybody above this line, from our most generous person down to 20 people down, are potential table captains. So we're going to reach out to them individually, and you're going to call them on the phone, you're going to email them, or whatever it takes to reach out to them. And you're going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, last year you were among our biggest supporters last year, and we're very appreciative of your support. And we would like to know if you'd be willing to be a table captain this year. Now, you don't have to buy a table. We just like you to come again. And we wonder if you'd be willing to go into your list of close friends and acquaintances and, extended family and so forth, and identify them in groups A, B, and C. A's would be those that you think would be willing to buy their own way into our event and be willing to be active bidders. Group B would be those that are willing to buy their way into our event, buy their own ticket, and possibly would be active bidders. And C is those that probably wouldn't be able to afford a ticket, and those you probably aren't going to call. But if you'd be willing to work through your A list and B list until you fill your table of 10, we would certainly appreciate it. Now, most people that can spend a lot of money in an event are also well connected enough that they probably would have no problem finding 3, 4, 5, 6 couples in their circle of friends that they could reach out to, because a lot of times those people in their circle of friends are people that invite them to the other gala. In other words, you want to invite them to your gala, but the people that spent a lot of money at your gala last year are probably being invited to somebody else's gala before your gala, somewhere in the weeks or months before your event. So now it's time for them to return the favor. They can now contact the person that invited them to that other gala and say, now, by the way, it's time for you to come to mine. And so that process will work really well. And that way your table will be filled with bidders, not eaters. It absolutely will. And then provide an incentive for table captains. I tell you, one incentive I've seen that works really effectively is to have a table captain prize. If someone signs up to be a table captain, and you can get 10 tables filled with table captains, and by the way, if you can get 10 tables filled with table captains, you absolutely have buying power in your room. You will have buying power for the right items if you can get 10 tables filled in this process with table captains. So have a table captain prize. And the way this works is very simple. You let the table captains know. You have a little kickoff party or something like that, like a launch party. Get all the table captains there, have a wine and cheese and beer, and beer or whatever, and light appetizers, and thank them for filling their table with bidders, not eaters. Let them know what you're looking for. Get a sense of what their friends and family might be willing to bid on. This will help you make sure you have the right items for them to bid on. So talk to them about auction items as well, and say to them, the team that, or the table that spends the most at our event, that entire team, that table of 10 will be given a hosted party of 10 post-event, in the weeks or months after, to reconnect as a group again and have a celebration. And we're gonna host that table for you. We're gonna cover the meals and the wine and all that, and you're gonna have basically a party to celebrate that your table spent the most at our gala. And so that becomes an incentive not only for the table captain, also becomes an incentive for everybody that they invite. And they're going to be bidding against the other tables, trying to outbid the other tables in order to win that big party that's going to come up in a month or two later on. So now that we have the room filled with bidders, not eaters, let's talk about getting the right items. So one of the common mistakes is focusing on what you want. Committees will get together and say, well, we have an auction. Let's go out and get a bunch of stuff. What would be good? Well, let's get tickets to the ball game, or let's go get a cruise, or let's get some jewelry, let's get artwork, let's get this, let's get that. And the problem with that is you end up with wonderful lists of what you want and absolutely no clue of how to get it. So what we found over the years, it works better, is to not focus on what you want, but focus on who you know. If you start with the who list, not the what list, the what, the who can donate becomes obvious. And so, well, who do you know? Well, you know yourself. Who's the most influential person in your life? Well, it's yourself. Well, who's the second most? Well, it's my spouse or significant other. Well, what about your next most? Well, it's my immediate family. Well, why my close friends? So each of these people on this who list you see down below, these are great places to shop. This is your virtual shopping mall for auction items. You do not need a cold call. Cold calling is a low return on emotional investment. I like to say that when you cold call a business for an auction item, you're asking someone that you don't know for something of value to them to be given to someone that they've never met before for a cause they know nothing about. And at that point, you are going to hear no. So if you focus on people you already know and you ask for something that you already know they can give, then your odds of hearing yes go way up. And now we talk about peeling the onion in here, and that actually is in a brochure that we're going to send you out. We actually are going to include a link in your thank you that you're going to get after this webinar. We're going to include a link to a brochure that has how many potential auction items in it, Gabby?
Over 650.
And
And
every
they're
one of
unique.
these unique items, and every one of these 650 unique items are items that I have personally either sold or seen sold at an auction. Because as I fly around the country doing auctions, I have a lot of dead time on airplanes. And so I sit there and I look at my auction catalog and I add them into the list. And we end up with 650, and they're all broken out by alphabetical, everything from autographed memorabilia to zucchini bread. Okay, so it's A to Z, and you're going to get that brochure. It's going to be very helpful. But in that brochure, we show an onion on the back. And the onion has the you in the middle. That you're the most influential, so it's the smallest circle. And we say, okay, you go through this list of 650 items. What could you donate? And you'll see something that's either what you could do or something similar to what you could do. And that's not exact. It might be just remind you of something you could do. Okay, what can my spouse donate? Well, up and down the list, alphabetical A to Z. What about mine? What about my Uncle Harry? Well, I go up and down the list with my Uncle Harry. And I noticed, golf at a private country club is on there. Oh, golf at a private, Uncle Harry belongs to a private country club. I'll now write golf next to Uncle Harry on my onion list. What about Aunt Martha? I get all the way to Q for Aunt Martha, and under Q it says quilts handmade. And I go, oh, that's right. Aunt Martha belongs to a quilting club. So I'll write down handmade quilt next to Aunt Martha. So that's how it works. So you start with your what list. You start with your who list. Then you match the what to the who, and now you have a shopping list because now you have a who list with a what next to it. So each of those people on your who list ends up being a store at a shopping mall, if you will. And so now you're going to go shopping for the item. And it's really simple. You call them and say, I need help. Would you be willing to donate? And what do you want me to donate? Well, I know that, Aunt Martha, you belong to a quilting club. Would you help us get a quilt? Yeah, I guess I could do that. Why not? Because it's easy for them to do that. Let's go on to the next one. They will say yes because you already have that relationship, and they know that if you were asked by them to help them with something that was important to them, you would equally say yes. Friends like to help friends. Neighbors like to help neighbors. Family like to help family. So you are going to hear yes almost every time, as long as you don't put the what I call the creativity monkey on their back. Don't ask Uncle Harry, hey, Uncle Harry, I'm having an auction. Would you donate something? Because what you've done there is you just put that creativity monkey on Uncle Harry's back. Now he's got to think what to donate. You need to let Uncle Harry know what you think he can donate. If you know that someone has an airplane and they love flying their airplane, ask them for an airplane ride. If you know somebody has a cabin somewhere they like to go away on weekends, ask them if they'd be willing to donate the cabin on the weekends. Always ask for something you know they already can do, and you're more likely to hear yes. So what are some things that sell best? Bragging rights always sell best. Unique experiences. Over the years, I've sold bike riding with Lance Armstrong, aerobatic flying with General Chuck Yeager, dance lessons with Paula Abdul, sing on stage with the Beach Boys. These are all things that are very unique experiences and bragging rights, because people want to be able to tell their friends, guess what I did over the weekend? What'd you do? Well, I went, I got to sing on stage with the Beach Boys. Honestly, it's a bragging rights huge. People, they have no value. It's what we call a priceless. People go through the roof. Limited edition or unusual items will always sell well if there's something that is perceived to be in demand. Memorabilia, autographed guitar by a famous artist, absolutely sells well. Items with emotional impact, anything for kids, giant stuffed teddy bears, a rainy day game locker for grandma and grandpa to have at their house, filled with toys and stuff, toys and games for the kids. So when the kids are visiting grandma and grandpa and it's raining outside, they can open up the trunk. Inside is filled with games. So believe me, the parents and grandparents will buy that item. Gifts would keep on giving. A great item that keeps on giving is have your name or someone of your choosing used as a character in an upcoming novel. Over the years, I've probably sold that dozens of times. Probably the one that sold the most was a chance to be a character in a Jackie Collins novel. I sold that at a Cancer Society gala in Beverly Hills many years ago. And the women that were bidding on that, they all wanted to be a character in a Jackie Collins novel, and they were just about ready to go at each other and with fisticuffs because they want that. It's sold for a ton of money. Why? Because it's a gift that keeps on giving. 20 years later, that person's name is still a character in that novel that's sitting on the bookshelf. Street naming. Have a street named after you or someone of your choosing, or a grandchild. Have a street named after a grandchild. Not as hard as you think. It's pretty easy to get as long as you know a developer that has not named all their streets yet. Practical items sell well. Trendy items sell well. There were times in years past we couldn't get enough Beanie Babies. We sold Beanie Babies like crazy. Assortments of Beanie Babies. They always sold really, really well. Cabins, trips, little mini vacations, those are always sell really, really well. International trips will sell well. And here's one that's often missed: items you would buy. The very first thing that you and your committee ought to do is make a list of things that you personally and your committee personally would buy at an auction, because you are sort of like the test group, if you will. You're the test group for your audience. Your audience is most likely made up of people that have similar interest as you. So if you make a list first of things that you as a committee would buy at auction, likely your audience are going to be interested in the same items. Right. Next. So here's the process. Make a list of everybody you know, starting with yourself. Look at your ABCs list. This is the Peel the Onion brochure that we're going to send you the link to. Put an item next to each person on your list, then call or visit them in person, ask if they like to donate it. And they may say, no, I can't do that. I no longer belong to the golf club anymore, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do this instead. It's okay. Ask for what you want, take what you can get, right? Fill out the form for them. Never burden a donor with a task of filling out a form. Do the form for them. If you give a donor a blank form, it will remain a blank form forever. Fill out the form, hand it to them, ask them to sign it, ask for the item, and deliver it back to the committee, okay? Very important that you do the work for the donor. Don't just ship it off. Turn the form into the procurement committee, ask the donor if they'd like to attend the event. Why? It's a courtesy. If you ask somebody to donate an auction item, but you don't invite them to the event, you're basically saying you value them as a donor of an item, but you don't value them as an attendee. That's not a very nice way to treat people. So make sure that if you ask for an auction item, you also ask if they'd like an invitation to the event. It's just being courteous. And then thank them early and often. Thank them right as soon as they get the donation, and then thank them right after the event, and make sure you thank them again when you start your process again next year, procurement, all over again. It should be a continuum. People that donate 1 year will donate year after year after year if you treat them with respect and thank them early and often. Okay. So
All right.
that's pretty much that. We have a couple slides remaining that we want you to see, and then we're going to do some Q&A.
Yeah. First, we want to know though, Jay talked a lot about technology today, stewarding your donors, following up after an event, running reports on that data to see who your top donors are, to have them become table captains and whatnot. If you would like to learn more about the software that enables you to do that, please go ahead and select yes, and we will make sure that we get in touch with you. I'll go
One
ahead
more
and
quick,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead, Jay.
one more quick thing, Gabby. A couple of last questions just came in. These are great questions. Are you inviting the donors to purchase a ticket to the event? Absolutely, you are, because you want the donor of the item to also self-select. You don't, and the next question was similar. Do donors expect a free ticket to the event? Absolutely not. If someone donates an item to an event, that's a separate act than buying a ticket to come to the event. Don't get caught in the trap of, well, this person gave me a $500 item, so I'm going to give them a free entry into the event. You'll end up with a lot of eaters, not a lot of bidders, because the person that donated the item thinks they've already made their contribution. Therefore, they're entitled to come to the event and party and eat the food because they, quote, paid for it with their donated item. You're still going to end up with eaters. So separate acts. Donate an item, absolutely. Respect them by inviting them, but do expect them to buy their own ticket. Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to get that in because that was one of the last questions.
No, yeah, we're gonna get to questions in 1 second. We just have a few more slides and then we will answer all your questions. But just to talk a little bit about Arreva and who we are as a company, we spoke a lot about technology today, but one of the challenges that we saw in the industry 30 years ago were all these different systems, whether it's for donation pages, campaigns, volunteers, team fundraising, peer-to-peer fundraising, auctions, and none of those systems spoke to each other, which led to, an inconsistent donor experience, maybe not, properly stewarding donors, just sending out a generic receipt after a donation is made and not helping to deepen those donor relationships. And the solution that Arreva has provided is called Exceed Further, and it is truly the only all-in-one solution in the industry for online fundraising, donor relationship management, healthcare hospitality, and auction software. We like to say many solutions in one database. As a company, we've been in the industry for over 30 years. We have over 6,000 clients. We've run over 30,000 live virtual hybrid events, galas, and fundraisers. And our software was built exclusively for the nonprofit industry. We're vetted and approved by Ronald McDonald House Charities, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Jewish Federations, Meals on Wheels, Variety, Catholic Diocese, St. Vincent de Paul, Healthcare Hospitality Network, Tides Foundation, just to name a few. We couldn't fit everyone on the slide. And these are all the applications that we offer in one database. It's completely integrated and automated from, gifts and pledges, emails, SMS, text messaging, events, memberships. All of these are in the back end and then on the front end as well. And the really great thing about this is you can select what you need and choose, and your solution can grow with you. If you choose to, do a silent auction for the first time, we have the ability for you to add in that silent auction software. Or if you're just doing a silent auction on your own, the auction software is a standalone product. So we really can fit your needs like a glass shoe. So if you did want to learn more about Exceed Further and the auction software that we provide, make sure you go ahead and hit yes on that demo. I'll pass it over to Jay for questions. I will leave that demo poll up if anyone would like to know more. But then going over to some questions that we had in the chat box, Jay, I'll tee them up for you.
Yeah, tee them up because I have not seen them. Yep.
Sure. So this one is from Barbara. She says, our fundraiser will be linked to our Chorales concert, with the concert in one space, followed by a reception with fundraising components in another space, a different building, but right next door. How do we get the audience to leave at the end of the concert and attend the fundraising reception next door?
Well, there's a couple ways. I would make sure that at the concert, you're not serving food as well. I assume you're not, but the food is later, people will follow the food. So if they're going to do the concert first and then they're going to move to where they get the food, the idea is to conduct the fundraising while people are eating. The worst thing you can do is do fundraising after people have eaten. So use the food as the incentive to move to the next location.
It's a great idea. And this comes from Barbara as well. Do raffles make significant money?
Raffles can make a very significant amount of money. Yes, yes, indeed. The nice thing about raffles is they tend to appeal to everyone. If you recall the pyramid we had, raffles will appeal to everybody up and down the pyramid, even the so-called eaters at the bottom. They may not have a lot of money to bid, but they'll buy a raffle ticket or two or five, depending on how much the raffles are. But everybody will buy a raffle ticket. And again, you can size different kinds of raffles for different purposes. We did just Sunday night, had an event down in Anaheim, and we sold a deck of 52 cards, and each card was $50. So they made pretty good money on that, about $3,000 on that, and the raffle prize was $1,000 tickets to Disneyland. So they tripled their money on the cost of the tickets basically on that. So, but everybody was in first 52 people were in, sold very quickly at $50 a ticket. So there's different kinds of raffles. I can help you with a number of different kinds. There's lots of variations. Some are just draw one ticket. Some are what we call a last person standing, which is what we did on Sunday night. We started drawing cards out of a companion deck until there was only one card left, and the last card left was the winner. It was kind of a reverse raffle as opposed to just pulling one card out. It was a lot of fun for everybody because they were very quiet when we were pulling cards to find out if they were still in the game or not. So let's talk to me about, if you like, reach out to me and I'll talk to you about a lot of different raffle items. So what's next?
Yeah. And Jay, is there a formula for determining the ideal amount of items and activities like raffles?
Yeah, no, there's a formula for sure on determining the number of auction items you should have for the number of buying units. Think of that bell curve that you saw before. The top of the bell curve of appropriate items in a silent auction is about a 1-to-1 relationship of items to buying units. Doesn't mean you have to have it, but each item you get up to about the 1-to-1 relationship will continue to earn more revenue. Once you pass over that 1-to-1 relationship, you're spreading relatively the same amount of money across more items, which means that you're spending more space, more layout, more aggravation and everything else, to set it up. And you're not making appreciably more money by having more items. More items is not necessarily good. Sometimes appropriate number of items is good. As far as the number of different things to raise money on, certainly you want a live and silent auction. I would say that if you're not doing a live auction, you're missing the boat on for two reasons. One, there'll be people in your room that are not really the shoppers in the silent auction. They want to give you money. They're looking for something substantial to select as their gift, as in return for their substantial gift, their gift to you in relation for their gift back. So they want that trip. They want that high-end item. You need to do that. The second reason is you're going to do a raise the paddle, hopefully. And you're going to ask people to make a straight cash contribution at some point. The live auction sets that up. So for sure, you need a live auction, silent auction, raise the paddle. Those three elements should be on every event. Then add into that, there should be at least one good raffle of some kind. It can be a golden ticket raffle where the winner gets the choice of anything out of the live auction up to the value of tickets sold. Or it could be what we call a bucket raffle where you got 10 or 20 items and they can buy tickets and drop tickets into the buckets to win the item that they're trying to self-select. That's an okay raffle as well. There's 50-50 raffles. Give people 2 or 3 different ways to spend their money, and that's good. You can overwhelm them. You can have so many things. It's okay to maybe have a wine pull or something like that. You can have a heads or tails game. But if you start asking them to spread their money across 6, 7, 8 different ways, then you're sort of overwhelming them. So I would say live auction, silent auction, raise the paddle for sure. Add in one or two raffle items, or maybe one game or 1 or 2 raffle items and a wine pull, and you're probably in the right ballpark. Okay.
Great, Jay. Another question that came in, should auction items be available to those not attending?
So there's a lot of controversy about this. One side says, well, we may make more money if we have people that are not attending bidding. The problem is it also could trap you the following year when you want to invite people to come to the event again. They say, well, I didn't need to spend all that money at the event. I could have bid on the same item and stayed at home in my pajamas. So I think you need to make your event feel somewhat exclusive. And you do that by saying, if you want to bid on this item, you probably ought to come to the event. That said, there can be an exception. The exception is not opening it up to everybody, but maybe allowing an absentee bid on a couple of the high-end items. Maybe you got a trip to Switzerland, you got a big cruise. Someone says, gosh, I'd love to come to your event, but I've got a conflicting event. My company's having their annual sales meeting, or my daughter's getting married or whatever it might be. There's some reason why they can't come to your gala, but they want to bid on one or two things specifically. You could take that as an absentee bid, let your auctioneer bid on behalf of that absentee bidder. That's totally fine. But I think once you say that you can bid on items in real time against people that are sitting in a room, you're probably going to sabotage the ability to get people in the room in following events.
That's great, Jay. Few more questions. We're a little bit over, but if you have the time, I think we can get these answered. What is the best time to do the raise the paddle at your event?
So I've seen it done in three different ways. I've seen it done at the beginning of the live auction. Just did that Sunday night. I see it done sometimes at the end of the live auction. More often than not, we do it in the middle of the live auction. We build the live auction items to follow a bell curve. We sort of ramp the values up from, where's my camera? We ramp the values up from low dollar value to high dollar value back to low dollar value. Huge mistake. Do not save the best item for last. Do not do that. That's a big mistake. People hold their money back waiting for the big item, and then only one person wins it. So you want to sell your biggest item of the evening about 50 to 60% of the way through the live auction. So if you had 15 items, about item number 6, 7, or 8 is the biggest item. Immediately following that big item, you would do the raise the paddle. You take a pause after you sold the big item. You'd show your 2 or 3 minute video about why you're asking for money. Then you'd have somebody do a personal pitch about the money, and then the auctioneer, we would ask for their donations, and then we would roll into the balance of the live auction items. That tends to work best, although it can work on both ends. If you're going to do it at the end of the live auction, huge caution. Make sure that you have something of importance to the audience to do after the raise the paddle. For example, don't serve dessert until after the raise the paddle. If they're eating the dinner, have them eat the dinner, and then do the raise the paddle immediately. Do the live auction immediately following. I said that wrong. Have them do the live auction while they're eating dinner. Immediately following the live auction, do the raise the paddle, and then serve dessert after the raise the paddle, because no one will leave until they've had dessert. The biggest mistake you can make is doing an after dinner auction. Don't do that. If you do a during dinner auction, that's okay too, but make sure you hold out the dessert until at least you've asked for the donations. Okay.
That's great. And then you gave an example earlier in the webinar about an auction that you had done in Beverly Hills. Do you have any tips for organizations that maybe are not in a major city on how to acquire, certain auction items or get the right people in the room?
Well, it's the right people in the room, believe it or not, use the very same onion as getting the right items. When you get your ABC form from us, when we send you the link, and you make that who list by the circles, the concentric circles, yourself, your immediate family, and your friends and neighbors, that is the same methodology for putting the right people in the room, because the people in the room are people that are connected to your cause. Random strangers that maybe have lots of money are not going to bid on your items unless they're connected emotionally to the cause. So you're better off taking that same circle, if you will, that onion peel, and once you're done going after auction items, go back to the very same list and say, Uncle Harry, how about you and Aunt Martha coming to our auction? Now, that they can afford it because they belong to a private country club, right? So you already know their capability. You know whether they're a potential bidder or eater because you have that relationship, and use that very same technology to invite them. And at Beverly Hills, that was just an example, by the way. I've done very expensive, very successful events in very small towns in rather, we'll call middle income areas. So it really depends on whether the people are connected to what you're raising money for. That's the bottom line.
And then one more question, and then we'll finish it off. This is our last question. This is from Nicole. Have you heard of the golden ticket raffle? We had success last year, but would love your opinion on it.
The golden ticket raffle is great. It really all depends on whether in your state you're allowed to do it or not. You might, in some states, you might have to get a gaming license to do it. In other states, it doesn't really matter. But the golden ticket works like this. It's only available to people that are at your gala. You pick a value, a price, I should say, for the ticket that allows you to make enough money if you sell out all the tickets to cover the cost of your most expensive item in your live auction. Now, let me give you an example of that. You want it to be a limited ticket raffle. You don't want it to be unlimited. You want the buyer of the ticket to know that there's only a certain number of tickets. We're only going to sell 100 tickets, or we're only going to sell 50 tickets, whatever it is. So that way the buyer knows they've got a 1 in 100 chance of winning, as an example. They buy a ticket for $100. They've got a 1 in 100 chance of winning. If you sell all 100 tickets, you've made $10,000. Right before the live auction begins, you draw a ticket. There's only 100 tickets in the in the bowl, and that person chooses any item they want out of the live auction catalog, up to, and this is important, up to the value of tickets sold. If you've got a $10,000 item in the auction and you've only sold 50 tickets, you've only made $5,000. They can take any item they want up to $5,000. The item that's $6,000 and $10,000 they can't have. That way you'll never give away an item as an auction item for less money than what you made at fair market value. You'll always get at least fair market value for that item, as if you sold it at auction. Now here's the little secret. It is extremely rare for people to actually take the most expensive item out of the live auction. They don't. They take the item they want. So I've seen it, golden tickets, where we've made $10,000 on the golden ticket, and the person took a $1,500 item because that's what they really wanted. So you'll probably, for sure, get all your money back, but you will often make a lot more than you would have gotten for that item if you tried to sell it as an auction item. So that's the golden ticket. By the way, I have a write-up on that. If anybody's interested in that specifically, I'd be happy to email. Just let us know, and I'll email you a complete write-up on how to successfully have the golden ticket.
Great. Well, those look like all of our questions. If you did want that write-up on the golden ticket raffle, please make sure to let us know in the chat box, so we make sure to get that over to you as a follow-up to the webinar. You will be receiving an email from us with the recording, the PowerPoint, and as well as that live and silent auction item guide with 650 items, so you can help peel the onion and get your auction items that are best fit for your organization. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we went a little bit over. Thank you, Jay. This was an amazing session, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Anyone who requested information, we will be in touch with you. But thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.